Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like Diamonds, back again. We are talking with Matt-In-A-Yak, 8 rods in the back, plus a big old trophy and a check in the bag. What's up, dude?
What's going on now?
So, pretty wild story here that just happened. Matt, who's one of our full-time fishing coaches up there in the Panhandle, he entered a tournament where he was the only kayaker. This is a tournament for boaters, inshore fishing tournament, and each boat was a team, 2-3 anglers per boat. Matt is the only person in a kayak, and I'm going to ruin kind of the ending, but then again, we're going to backtrack on and talk about really what you can learn from this and how it happened and how he did it. But he beat every one of them, so he got first place and a nice check in this tournament. And these are some big names. I mean, there's some people who were sponsored and some legit anglers in here. And Matt was able to bring home the gold and really shock everyone, because I'm willing to bet at the captain's meeting before the tournament started, they were probably all snickering about you. Maybe behind your back, maybe not, maybe right in front of your face, and saying, "Oh man, this guy in the kayak doesn't have a chance," and yet you pulled it out. So, talk about this tournament. What was it? What was going on as a 2-day tournament? Where was it, etc.?
Yeah, so this tournament was actually it was called the Rockin' Reds. It was a 2-day inshore offshore tournament. The target species were mainly redfish and red snapper. Those were the targets there. But there were other jackpot pots. But this tournament was actually put on in memory of a young man named Gage Pittman, who was left this world all too early. And his family and some amazing sponsors came together, along with the fishing community, who can come together like no other, and really just came out and showed support for the family and did a great event. But it was a 2-day inshore offshore tournament, and the inshore was there was the redfish paid out to 5th place. They had a 2-day fish aggregate weight jackpot, a trout bag jackpot, and a redfish with the most spots jackpot. Those were the payouts for the inshore division, and that's where I stayed. So yeah, that was kind of the setup for the tournament. And even before the tournament, you said, maybe some people were snickering about me entering the tournament. I can tell you that the people that were running the tournament snickered, because before I even signed up, I didn't sign up until 11 o'clock the night before, because I didn't know if they were going to allow kayaks. I knew they didn't have a kayak division. I'd reached out to some friends who fish in kayaks, and they even some said, "Nah, man, we're going to go in a boat." So I said, "Well, I guess I'll be the only one." So I actually reached out to the people who ran the tournament, and I checked for permission. I wanted to make sure nobody was going to holler and scream if I did come out and actually, place in this tournament. So I did. I reached out, and they actually said it was going to be okay. And they kind of jokingly said, "You can even enter in offshore jackpots if you want to."
Yeah, we'll take your money.
Yeah, I will say this, it was 100% payout for this tournament. So it really wasn't for a good cause. It was to support the community and the family. So there wasn't anybody taking home a lot of money except for the participants. But so yeah, it was, there was still some funny in it. This guy really thinks he's gonna go. And like you said, there were some really people that I respect. They aren't just well-known names, but they're people I respect in my region, who just really know what they're doing. I respect them as anglers and in their profession as well, because they are on the water day in, day out, even more than I am. And they know what they're doing. So to be in an event with them just meant something to me as it stood.
Cool. And so we're going to break down a few of the things that you did differently. And I think one more question I have was, it anything goes in terms of baits? Could you use live bait, cut bait, lures? What was the deal?
Good question. You are correct. It was a no holds barred for bait. Live bait was allowed for this tournament, so that was not a restriction anybody was held to for artificial only. That was a restriction I held myself to.
So you, in a kayak, I assume, did not have a live well, and you had no live bait?
No, sir.
No cut
sir.
bait?
no cut bait, no live bait.
No dynamite.
No dynamite. I left that in the truck this time, man. I always forget that on tournament day.
All right. So let's start with finding the fish. That's the number one thing we hear from people is it's a spot, right? Everyone wants the spot. Where do I find the fish? You're talking about a pretty big area, right? That you guys could run to, assuming you had a boat. You have a disadvantage that you can't go run, 15 miles back and forth on the stretch. How did you pick your spots? What was the game plan, if you will? I'd love for you to share everything from that pre-trip planning part is so critical because you're doing this now. For one, you got respect and money on the line, and a lot of pressure too. So I'd love to hear how you went about that.
Well, just like you said, going into it, you have to have a plan. You can't just say, well, I think I'm gonna just go out here and see what happens, because tournament fishing is a lot different than just going out and catching fish. A lot of people can go out and catch fish, but to go out and catch a tournament winning fish, that's a tough feat, especially against a lot of other anglers. So you have to be precise about where you're going to target. You have to, make sure that you're setting yourself up for success. And for me, I am a huge prepper all the way when it comes down to knots, lures, and everything like that. But most importantly, on the computer, I do a lot of my homework on satellite imagery and the weather, and just the conditions. I pay attention to the reports that are around me. We get that from the community at saltstrong.com, and with the conditions, we have smart fishing spots, and that is a game changer because I can actually see bottom structure no matter where I want to look at. I can see nuances that a depth finder or Google or some of these other apps, or imagery providers just don't have. And it's on my phone. And the fact that it's so accurate from my computer to my phone, I can mark a spot on my computer, and then get it on the water and go look at it on my phone. And now I hit the water 5:30 in the morning, day one. So when I got on the water, I could not see the bottom structure. The only way I knew what the bottom looked like was by looking at Smart Fishing Spots app on my phone. It's 0 dark 30 and you can't see anything. How do you know you're in the right spot? Well, I knew because I told myself where I was going in the Smart Fishing Spots app. I set myself a route. I knew where I was going to stop at and what spots I was going to hit in the tide. And it just my app does it for me. It tells me I'm there. And once I'm there, I started targeting what I knew to be the type of spot I was looking for based on the conditions. I had the information about the tide. I had all the wind, weather, and everything else right there. So that was able to really play a big part in my success. I have a phone mount right there in front of me, and it's not for just taking pictures. It's so that I can be able to see where I'm at, what I'm doing, and what my plan is. And it all goes back to that app for sure.
This is more than just a selfie stick.
Yes, this is more than just a selfie stick. It is it lights my way. It really does. I know that may sound corny or cheesy, but when it's dark and I don't know where I'm going, and sometimes we get those, now that it's summer, we get those showers that are overnight and leave some cloud cover first thing in the morning. It can look 6:30 all the way to 9 o'clock. So some of those mornings, it's great for fishing. But if I can't see where I'm at as far as the bottom structure I'm trying to target without that high sun, it's tough. But with that app, I can see everything that's under that water without even the sun being up for me.
And if you guys don't know what he's talking about, the Smart Fishing Spots is our web app that is on your phone, tablet, wherever the heck you want it to be. And it's free for Insider members. And it's got all types of different little toggles for weather, for wind, where you can go out to 14 days. But also, as Matt's talking about here, it's got satellite maps like most everywhere does. But then it's got sonar, so you can actually see the depths and different ledges and the contour lines. Then you have this underwater, kind of like a 3D topography view as well, the shaded relief. And you can move all three of these little, I don't know, widgets, whatever you want to call them, back and forth. And it is so cool. I mean, it is game changing. I I'd love for you to talk about, not obviously this is a public podcast. Our insider members get all of our best stuff, and we talk about actually our actual fishing spots and why we found them and exactly where they were. But all that being said, can you give an idea of the type of spot? Meaning, was it an oyster bar? Was it the point or a creek mouth? What type of spot did you start with and why?
I can uh I can tell you exactly how I knew where to start.
There we
Just
go.
like you said, there's layers in there that talk about, not just the weather and the wind, but there's also a layer in there that shows me where oyster bars are. There's a layer in there that shows me where seagrass is. And I know with the conditions lately, it has been super blazing hot outside. And I know that with that type of condition, these fish are normally pushed out onto the flats. So I'm looking to target areas that have seagrass for sure. A lot of great ambush points for these big fish to be at. And another thing that helps is if there's oyster bars nearby. And by looking at both of those layers in the Smart Fishing Spots app, I was able to find a place that has both. And that was where I knew would be my high probability zone. So that gave me options. Say I didn't find the fish at the one spot I was liking to or hoping to. That also meant that those fish had somewhere else to retreat to if they didn't like that other spot. So that gave me a better chance as well. So that's exactly how I found the spot. It's by using the tools that were available, those layers inside of there. You're able to minimize those 10% zones or into the zones you want to fish at. You can isolate where those fish are supposed to be so that you spend less time searching and less time guessing where they could be. You know where they should be, and you can target them accordingly. You just keep moving till you find them, and that's what I did.
Did you, for the most part, try to use that same mindset or thought process where you're targeting oyster bars around seagrass, or did you change it up over the 2 days?
So day one was actually it was terrible, to put it nicely, for everybody that was involved. It was terrible. We all got soaking wet. It
Mm.
started raining about 7 o'clock that morning, and I weighed in with fully drenched clothes. Everything on me was soaking wet. All of day one, we were wet. So I targeted the areas that I thought I started deeper because of the conditions. Let's just say that I started deeper because it's hot, and but because of the rain and the lightning and the thunder that also moved in with that storm, that forced me to seek a little bit of shelter, or at least move a little closer to the shoreline, so that way if it did get directly over me, or I got into a position where I felt like I was unsafe, I could pull the kayak up on land and get out and just ride it out that way because that would be safest. Well, as I was heading into closer to the shoreline, I fished my way into it because I'm always fishing. And so when I made my way in there, I started finding more fish. The rain started keying me into, well, the rain pushed me to shore. And when I got to shore, I started finding a trend. And it was nothing much different than what I was doing 75, 100 yards away. I was just at the wrong spot. I guess because of the wind and current and the conditions, the fish had pushed in a little bit some too. And now, granted, the bottom was the exact same. So it's not that they weren't where they shouldn't have been. I wasn't where I should have been yet. Had I been zigzagging those flats rather than just drifting, because we had a really heavy south wind, 10, 12, 15 miles an hour. So I was drifting with that wind, and it was just hard for me to zigzag. But once I made a straight shot to that shoreline, that allowed me to start finding a trend. At that point, when I was deeper, I was throwing bigger baits, the bomber, the gold digger bomber. Those were going to be my big baits to catch a big fish. But when I came into the shallower areas and around that 2 to 3 foot area, I started throwing the Fred paddle tail, and I started catching a pretty good number of trout, and I started catching some redfish as well. But my redfish weren't anything to write home about. My redfish the first day was only, I think, 3.8 pounds. So it wasn't, something great. I think it was only 22 inches, but it was something to weigh in. But I started to find a pattern. I started to find where the fish were. I started to find what they were dialed in on, what bait they were looking for. And, it's no secret I carry 8 rods, and that's not for looks. That's because I plan on throwing 8, 10, 12 presentations throughout that day. And I do. Anybody that fishes with me knows that that's the truth. I don't carry those for aesthetic purposes. I fish those rods, and I throw those baits. Even when I'm finding fish with one, I'll throw another to find a better bite. And that's exactly what I did. I knew from the first day that I was getting I was getting numbers from my Fred paddle tail, but I wasn't getting any big fish. But I knew big fish were there because of the cloud cover and the storm pattern through the first day. I was throwing topwater, and I was getting some boils, but they just weren't committing. So that's why I kept going back subsurface. But on the second day, if we
I
move
got a
forward,
question about the first day real quick. So what gave you the idea when you started getting pushed in? So you said you're a little bit deeper, and then the storm comes, you're in now 2 to 3 feet of water. There's fish there. I assume you're seeing some bait, you're seeing boils, you caught a couple. So you're in a 90-10 zone, a feeding zone. Why did you go from the 5-inch Slam Shady or Gold Digger Bomber down to a 3.5-inch Fred? What triggered that to say, all right, I want to downsize?
I wasn't getting bites on the bomber, that plain and simple. I mean, if I'm not getting hits on it,
yeah,
I'm moving on.
And what were you seeing? Were you seeing mullet? What were you seeing?
Yeah, I was seeing mullet, and they were large mullet. So I know that I was on the right profile to start with. And I've recently caught some big fish, not too terribly far from the same area, about 10 miles, so with the same type of bottom structure, the same depth on that bomber. So I knew the profile was right. But when I moved in, maybe with those conditions, the low light, whatever it was, those fish just weren't keyed into that larger profile or that color. So, but once I moved in, and I could still see a lot of the bait fish around, but it was also an outgoing tide, and these fish were sitting at the ends of these creek mouths. So I went to my go-to, always the Fred paddle tail, either on a Haas Helix hook or a Z-Man Pro Shrooms jig head. And those two right there, that's all it takes sometimes, man. Just a little Fred.
And Fred means fooling redfish every day.
Every day.
Yeah, and it does work. All right, so that was day one. You caught a bunch of reds, got one big enough to weigh in, and then so you're looking good. I assume it was kind of a tough day for a lot of people. What happened on day two?
It was. So day one, I get in and I weigh those in. I did not weigh any of my trout bag because you were allowed to upgrade. It was your 2-day total for your bag. So I kept what I caught for my trout, kept them fresh to ready to go to upgrade for the next day. And the next day, or at the end of the first day, the biggest redfish was only, I think, like 6 pounds, or I don't know if anybody even broke 6 pounds. So going into day two, a buddy of mine even asked me, he said, are you going to go back, man? I know you had a tough day, man. It was a grind out there, cause we're exchanging stories. And I said, man, it was tough, but I think I figured them out right before I left, because about the time I went to shore, I only had about 2 hours left before I had to drive back to the launch. So I didn't have the whole day to dial these fish in anymore. So I made a decision, I could either cut my losses there and try and run somewhere else that I know where I could probably, it's all a gamble in that spot. But I told him, I said, I think I'm going to go back. And that's what I did. So when I went back, day two was absolutely blazing hot. It was so humid, so hot, so sticky. We'd gotten rained on all the day before. Gnats, no-see-ums were everywhere. It was just flat first thing in the morning. And for me, I knew exactly what that meant. That meant it was going to be Topwater City all morning long, as long as I could, as long as the sun allowed me to. Anyway, that's what was in my mind. As long as the sun allows me to, I'll throw topwater. And I did. I threw topwater, and I caught some trout, and I got some humongous rolls from redfish. And I mean, they weren't just boils, they were porpoising on this moonwalker, and they'd get it down. And and it was almost like, I really think these redfish were so big that they ate it long ways and they never got the hook. I know that makes great, because I could see them come up on it. Or maybe it was just me. I wasn't walking it after they took it under. I tried to set the hook. I don't know what it was, but I missed 2 of them like that. And so I psyched myself out. I said, I got to get these fish. And I went to the Alabama leprechaun. I went to the bomber. I went to the Fred. I power poled down. Okay. Like, I don't have a power pole. I got a push pole, but I got an anchor pin. So I stuck the anchor down because I know there's big fish here. Same place I've identified the day before from the smart fishing spot. So use, pitch black, use my track marker to get right back there. And I just start throwing, and I go back to these subsurface lures, and I start picking up some smaller redfish again on the Fred. No action on the Alabama leprechaun, no action on the bomber. I think it may have had something to do with the water depth, just because the day before I had a south wind. Overnight it switched to a different wind direction, and even though the tides were the same, there was about a 2-foot water difference with the way the winds had pushed that water off of the shoreline. So the Fred paddletail continued to be the performer. Even though I was fishing further off the shore, I was still fishing that same depth. But when I switched, I still got smaller fish. I never could get any of those bigger ones. And I fished on that day, covered a lot of ground, just save a lot of time. I covered a lot of ground, caught more fish. I probably caught 15 redfish total. My biggest one on the Fred paddletail was 24 inches, and he was like 4.4 pounds. Still nothing to write home about. And all of these fish, I know this is tournament day. These are no good. I'm having a phenomenal day.
Yeah.
But this ain't going to put me on tournament board. So I made a decision right then and there, even though it was about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. No, it was probably 11. I made a decision. I knew the big fish were coming on top. I may have not been hooking up to them, but they were showing me the action. So that was what I committed to. I committed to going back to Topwater with the moonwalker.
Is the sun up now? Like, it's clouds?
It's up. We got about a 6-mile-an-hour wind, I'd say, from southeast. Sun is up, still blazing hot, and sticky. So sticky hot because it had rained. And I don't mean just rained a little bit. It absolutely dumped on us up here in the Panhandle Big Bend. And and mind you, this was a 2-day inshore offshore tournament. My thoughts are with the boys offshore. I know how nasty it is for us here. I know that those guys are really going through it. So, I'm just kind of keeping everybody in my prayers because it's just so nasty. So the second day, it was so hot from all of that rain and stuff. It was just, the sun was just beating down. So yeah, the sun's way up in the sky, and I can see fish now. I have the ability to sight cast at this point. I've even sight casted into schools of fish that I've been able to see. A lot of guys came in that day, said that they were seeing schools of fish as well. They were definitely schooled up, and we could sight cast to them, but I could not get any of those big fish to bite. So I went back to the moonwalker, and I dedicated myself to throwing it until either my arm bled or I hooked up to one of those big fish. And luckily, about an hour and a half later, I got the one. And it was a glorious moment. Unfortunately, I do not have that on camera just because it's just such a brutal day. I missed that opportunity. The camera died. But it was an amazing fight, an amazing fish. And I knew and actually, I wish it was on camera so you could hear what I was saying the whole time. I kept saying, please don't be over. Please don't be over. Please don't be over. Because I knew how big this fish was when he ate it. And when he took it under, I just kept walking that dog like
And
Wyatt always says.
explain
"Don't
what
stop."
you're talking about over slot for those wondering what you're talking about, because this
So this
tournament
tournament,
had to be in the slot.
yes, sir. Because this was a boat tournament, unfortunately, it was also a kill tournament. Also, the fish had to be legal. They couldn't be outside of slot limits. So these fish had to be between legal regulation of fish. So I had to have a 27-inch or under to 18-inch redfish. So to make sure I was within slot.
And what was it? What was this?
It was 27 on the nose, and I weighed him on the water at 7.9 pounds.
Ooh.
He weighed in at tournament at 7.6, but I'm not unhappy. You know, my scale may have been a little off.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, talk about an adrenaline rush, because Luke and I have done a couple of those tournaments in the past, and if you get a redfish that's anywhere close to 8 pounds, if you get an 8-pounder, it's just like, man, I won. Like I got this sucker. Game over. I'm going in to weigh in.
There was only one person, actually an insider member, who was going to fish it with me. He just wasn't able to that day. Only one person knew about that fish before it was off the water, and I sent him the picture, and he said, "That's funny." He knew. We you know, when you know, you know.
Yep.
And like you said, when I weighed that fish and I knew I had close to an 8-pounder, I knew I had a real good chance. And at that point, like you said, there was celebration, but a lot of thanks.
On the Moonwalker, Topwater in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Dang.
Sun shining, beautiful eat, crushed it on top, took it under, and I kept walking it just like Wyatt said, don't kill it, you know, which is super hard for me. I'm always of the ilk that wants to stop it and let them come back for it, but I kept it going. And I think that's why I was missing the ones earlier. Truthfully, looking back, I think that's the reason I was missing the fish earlier, is because when they would hit it, I would stop. And this fish, I kept walking it. When I saw that Moonwalker disappear, I kept walking it until I felt tension. And when I felt tension, I gave him the headache he was looking for.
Some of my most successful topwater days are when I'm looking around and don't even know that it happened until I have a fish on, right? It's almost like you're better off being blindfolded, as long as you have a pretty good cadence with your walk to dog. That's so true, man.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It was. And so at that point, I even at that point it was pretty much in the bag. I'd had all my trout bag. My fish weren't, in my opinion, weren't going to get any better at that point, other than my trout bag. So I did fish for a couple more hours. Weigh in was at 4. So I fished the last couple hours, and I caught a couple more trout, for my trout bag. And then I packed up and got the kayak loaded and headed on into weigh in. And at this point, all I knew was that the day before, because where I don't have I didn't wasn't able to check the leaderboard. It's posted online, so I could have, but I didn't. So, and all I knew at that point was the biggest weight after day 1 was around 6 pounds. So I knew I had a good chance just driving back to that ramp. So all I'm thinking is, or to the weigh-in at the park, all I'm thinking is just, I hope there's no wrecks on my way, in front of me. I hope there's no truck problems. I hope there's no funny business, because, I'm worried about making it. But fortunately, I made it with plenty of time, and I was able to, and I turned my fish in, and I took when I came in with my redfish, I believe that put me in second or first place, and my trout bag automatically put me in first place. Prior to my 9.8-pound trout bag, the highest was somewhere around 6, I believe. And once I weighed my fish in, I just started hanging out with my friends who were there for the same reason as me. I kind of quit thinking about the fish. I quit thinking about the weigh-in. I knew I had done what I went there to do. I showed up to fish. I showed up to fish a good day, and weigh some good fish. And I was proud of my success. I'd already reached my own attaboy. So I went on to hanging out with my friends and the people I respect and know, and talking to them about their day. And it wasn't about 30 minutes or so later, people started coming up to me and telling me, "Man, hey man, good job, man. Congratulations on your win." And that was when about time it finally hit me that I held out, man. My fish maintained their position.
That is so awesome. All out of a kayak, all using lures, all using the Salt Strong lures. Moonwalker and Fred, it sounds like were the two main ones that put the is that what caught the trout? The Fred or
Yes,
which
sir.
one? Okay.
Yes, sir. The Fred is what performed all day. That's my paddle tail of choice. It's my comfort bait, between
Yep.
that Alabama leprechaun and the moonwalker, that's like my trifecta for covering my area. If I can't do it with that, I start running out of options. Then I start getting a little crazy. Then I start, digging deep, but that's when I really start becoming a better fisherman though, because it takes me outside of my comfort zone. And I'll say this, anybody that fished this tournament fished in some brutal conditions, and my hat's off to every single one of them. Everybody that weighed a fish in, everybody that competed and showed up. It was a tough tournament for any angler, no matter what your skill level or anything like that. So it was tough for sure. But it was a really great time.
So what was it like being up there? I assume you went up on stage or a podium or somewhere that was up high and they told you won.
Yes, sir. I actually I was in the back talking to some friends. Actually, I was trying to find some ice. I needed some to drink so bad. I had a bottle of water, but it was hot, and I needed some ice. I dehydrated from 2 days on the water. Fishing tournaments are brutal. So, and when they finally called my name, I went up there, and they said a little bit of the same things we said. This guy is in a kayak, and he just weighed in. When I weighed those fish, they were pretty astonished then. And when I came up to get the check, and it was really good to get on that stage, just in front of those people that I respected. um you know the check was nice. I'm not gonna say it wasn't. The winnings were nice, but the ability to be on that stage in front of people I respect, and I know their ability. So to be able to say that I was able to come out on top of them at the end and stand on that stage a winner, that was more than the money could ever do for me. And doing it there in the Salt Strong shirt, that's a big win for me and my team, man. Everybody in it.
We're super proud of you. And a lot of people could say, "Oh, he got lucky," right? Because we've all heard that. Maybe we've even said that about someone else who had maybe a lucky day. But over time, I have seen that luck does happen sometimes. But in tournaments, it's preparation, right? I mean, it's preparation and taking action that usually causes that luck. You don't just get lucky only fishing for an hour and all of a sudden having fish jump in your boat. It's a ton of preparation. So huge kudos to you. And to me, I love it just because it's just more proof that everything that you're teaching, right, and everything that our fishing coaches are teaching works. I mean, we have Pat. I love hearing from Pat every week. And you and Pat got to fish together. If you guys don't know, Pat is one of our other full-time coaches, and he set off kind of on his own personal challenge to start in Texas and going all the way to Virginia. By the way, he's stopping in every major city and every state from Texas all the way to Virginia, and proving that what we teach and the lures that we use and the concepts that we talk about, and now our software, that it can work in every single area. And so far, he's already made it to Texas, back to Florida, and now he's going to start moving up the East Coast. And the guy's been crushing it the whole way. And I just think that's so cool. Fishing's not easy, right? And we're not trying to say that it is, and that anyone can just join the insider club and you're going to be winning tournaments. No, it takes preparation and some work. We try to give you the tools that make it easier and cut out years and years, literally, of a lot of on the water hard knock, like learn it the hard way through trial and error. But it still takes work, right? It would be like someone saying, "Oh yeah, just join my gym, and the next day you're going to lose 30 pounds and be the strongest ever." That's just not realistic. You got to put some work in. But there could be a gym that could give you some awesome shortcuts and have some really good trainers, and that's what you are. So man, huge kudos. I just love seeing it. And as soon as I heard the story, I was like, all right, we got to bring Matt on this podcast and talk about that. And I hadn't heard a lot of this stuff, so this was really, really cool. Man, huge kudos to you, and obviously everyone in the tournament. And did you do any smack talking at the end, or did you just smile and drop the mic?
No, I didn't actually. I did get caught. Well, I did do one little bit of smack talking, I mean, not much, but a little piece because that's who I am. But when he called me up there for my redfish check, and he gave me my check, and he asked me. He said, "All right, man, it's great. You'll be back here next year, right?" And I said, "Of course. I'll be back here in about 2 minutes," because I knew I'd already won the trout bag as well. So I was coming back up to the stage for another
Oh,
check as soon as he presented the next one. So yeah, that was about the extent of my smack talk. I like to do my smack talk on the water. And that's not to say that I can't be, I can't be outdone. There's a lot of talent out there, but I fished a good one, and I did it because I paid attention to what was happening on the water. And just like you said, I put in the right preparation. And you'll only be as successful on the water as as much time as you put into your preparation. You know, Many people may not know this, but I've never fished inshore like I did before, say 2 years ago, and I got my first kayak, and just about everything I know came from the Salt Strong community, the Salt Strong courses, the classes, the tips, everything there. So if I was a blank slate and everything I know in the span of a year and a half has allowed me to win or place in 3 tournaments out of 4 that I have fished in, that speaks something, man. These tactics, they don't they don't just work. They're tried and true. They're tried and true.
yeah. I didn't even know about the 3 out of 4. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm sure there will be many, many more, and we'll have to have you come on and share more. And if you want to see more of Matt and exactly how he fishes and does his pre-trip planning, that's just one of the many cool things that we do for our insider members. So, this is obviously a public podcast, so we don't share our spots and all the stuff. We reserve our best stuff for our insider members. And every day, literally Monday through Friday, one of our fishing coaches, including Matt, is out there fishing in new spots. We go fish new spots to prove this stuff works. And we show the pre-trip plan, right? Like what Matt's talking about, all the prep work of why we're picking these spots. And we actually get on satellite maps and use Smart Fishing Spots, which is our software, our tool, and show you why we're picking spots. So that's really important is understanding the why, right? You mentioned it, based on tides, based on what was happening. That's why I picked these spots, because that's when all the pieces start to come together. And then, so that's one kind of video. Then there's the on the water footage, right? To see actually what happened when you got to those spots. Because I'll be honest, it's a little bit different looking at it from a satellite map, all of a sudden getting out there and say, whoa, this is a little bit bigger than I thought. And then the post-trip analysis, which is really powerful too, just like all NFL players and hockey players and any professional athlete, they're looking at game film to see what they can learn about themselves and their opponents. We do the same thing, and we're doing that every week. And of course, now with this software, to me, that alone is a no-brainer. And then you throw in the tackle discounts and the amazing community. It's just the best value in town. And we have not raised prices, even though I think almost everything in America has gone up in prices, right? I mean, in terms of cost, from groceries and gas, et cetera, and vehicles and trucks, it's nuts. We have not raised prices, but we are going to, for a lot of reasons. The biggest one being just all the money we've invested into this Smart Fishing Spots web app. We're just getting started, by the way, too. If you haven't seen some of the new news, go check it out there. It's saltshore.com, and the pricing section, you can see everything that comes with the membership. But doggone, it is such a good deal. And the best news is, if you're not catching fish and if you're not saving time and money, you don't even pay. We'll literally give you your money back. We only want you in there and paying if you're 100% thrilled and satisfied. So come join us today if you haven't already. If you current members, thank you guys so much. Hit us up with questions down below. The best spot, even if you might be watching on YouTube, you're more than free to leave a comment, but the best place to make sure it comes to us is to go to saltstrom.com in the fishing tips section. And if you're there, you'll see at the very bottom of the actual blog post, there's a place to leave comments, and those come right to us. So Matt-In-A-Yak, 8 rods in the back. Awesome job, dude. Super proud of you, and proud that you're on this team. And man, just such a cool story that I'm sure you'll be telling grandkids someday. So,
Of course.
All right, brother, we appreciate you. We out. Whoop, whoop.
Man.